What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin, John.
And we have an album review for you. So yet another one that came out on the 11th of March was the newest offering from Arkaik, Labyrinth of Hungry Ghosts. This again, of course, comes out on the 11th, much like this very busy weekend full of lots of different stuff. This comes out on the Artisan era, which this is actually their first release on the Artisan era. They were on Unique Leader for the longest time. This band formed in 2004 in Riverside, California. This is their 6th album overall, and these guys are straight up fucking tech death, and brutal tech death at that. This is some pretty nasty stuff.
And unlike most tech death, which is super noodly at times, and oftentimes will sacrifice heft and groove for tech, these guys are not the case. They never really have been. It's all been more about the groove for these guys, and the tech side of things takes often a back seat, actually, to the songwriting, which is something I really like about tech death.
Yeah.
When it's done correctly. This is the correct way to do it, I think.
Groove, pummel, build the songs, kind of add the tech as icing around it. Really good examples of that nice mix of brutality, groove, and then like technical play, but again, not sacrificing riffs and everything. The Orphean Descent, the opening track, and Abode the Deceiver. Both of these songs pretty much accentuate what we're talking about here. These guys like to lay on big, nasty grooves, even some kind of slam-ish riffs, and bring in sort of like technical elements around there. But it never seems to deviate from a really fluid song structure. The songs flow really well, and a cool thing that they do is they like to continue on stuff for more than one measure, which is generally a complaint I have about tech death. You hear something really cool, it's like, that's badass, they're already done with it. They've moved on completely and I'll never hear it again.
Right, and they never revisit it. And in this case, they like to have it stick around for a minute.
They come back to certain points, like there is a weird sort of almost genty riff in Orphean Descent that is kind of built around this really clever breakdown. I just like the rhythm of it. And it sticks out as this like interesting little earworm, and then they break from it for a little bit. There's a really cool melodic lead, which the leads on here are very melodic.
Top notch.
And then it's right back to that cool, like groovy bounce, that weird little genty accent. It's not really the riff itself that comes across as gent, it's this little accent, and then boom, we're back to pummeling, and by the time you get down to the end of the song, there's like suffocation levels of just crush your fucking skull heaviness. And then in terms of like hanging on to a particular part for like a number of measures, this triplet city chugathon that is in Abode the Deceiver, almost Meshuggah's bleed level of picking. Yeah. I felt bad for this dude's wrist because man, it is frantic, and then the double bass comes in and it just is fucking sick. But they keep that going. Like, this isn't just like a little blip and on to the next batch of noodles that they have prepared in the kitchen. This is, let's just keep working this thing for a little bit and throw a cool lead on top of it. Smart songwriting.
Another interesting thing about this album is that towards the end of the record, mainly To Summon a Moria and The Vertical Road, I think these take more of almost a prog-esque type of approach. First of all, the songwriting overall has vastly improved for this band. The way they structure these songs now is amazing. But these two songs most specifically, someone has been jamming, say, Rivers of Nile, Where Owls Know My Name, and I even got some Black Crown Initiate vibes out of The Vertical Road. There's a lot more focused on the melody, but they never really deviate away from that just heavy, fucking disgusting, brutal overall feeling of these songs.
It's really cool to hear this sort of ambience, this extra atmosphere come in. To Summon a Moria actually has a flute player that is all over this. So yeah, it's not a saxophone for once. But the flute, it sounds kind of smooth like a saxophone, and it creates these cool harmonies when they pair it up with the leads. It actually kind of takes on almost a Middle Eastern sound, like a little bit like Nile, except it's a little bit less aggressive. Mummies are going to devour you.
Sure.
You'll be lashed by a slave whip or something, you know, that sort of thing. Nile things. This is more atmospheric, more lush, and I kind of like this blend because in these songs you still have those brutal moments.
Yep.
But you also have progressive moments and still like tech death, because you still get like wild noodles, creative riffs, and just insane song structure too. But it just feels bigger in scope.
Yep. I need to mention, too, the drum work on this album is fucking spectacular. Nathan, good job, brother. Whereas a lot of tech death is just blast beats and double kick, there's so much incorporated into these songs. Ghost notes, double kick stutters. Kind of reminds me of like immolation drums at times, too.
I mean, there's a lot incorporated in some of the beats, too, like, you know, like clever tom hits and such. Really cool cymbal accents. And again, that kind of just adds to the overall technical flair of this. You know, I generally bitch about technical death metal, and honestly, kind of tech death that comes out on this label because they have a very particular sound. There's usually a lot of keyboards on here, and this is different. There's not a tremendous amount of keyboards. There are some, and they are used intermittently more as like atmospheric transitions between tracks.
Yeah. And but they're just like peppered in towards the end. They're not, you don't hear them really in the songs until like you said, it transitions from song to song. It's the only time they really exist. They're spacey, it's kind of dark, you know.
And I mean, we have Malcolm Pugh, who does all the bass work on here, and I believe he probably added some of the synths that splash in there because, I mean, if you listen to any of his bands, there's a lot of synths. But this is cool because the synths are kind of back in the mix when they're in there. Like, there's occasionally moments like, oh, did I hear like a synth flutter, or is that like a piano accent? It's not very like synth forward. Like, there's not a lot of that neoclassical sort of stuff in there. Like, this is, again, lots of brutality, lots of technical play, but overall built on like just grooves and chugs and solid hooks for a band as heavy as this.
And yeah, like as far as hooks are concerned, the very ending groove on the Vertical Road with that end like chug bendy thing with the melody over it, that's, I think, one of my favorite moments in this whole album.
It's really cool, like, just to hear the melody on top of it and the riff underneath it, because both are very different. Like, because the riff underneath it screams like, oh God, was it Close Eye Visuals? Kind of like that bendy riff on Meshuggah's Nothing.
Yes.
But the melody on top is very pretty and atmospheric. And you have these epic leads on top. And I gotta say, the vocals, too, on here, solid.
Yes.
It's a very powerful, straightforward growl. You can actually make out a fair amount of what he's saying. And he has, like, a good register flip. Like, occasionally you hear some, like, more high screams, kind of blackened, and there's a fair amount of dissonance on here. And when he wants to get down low and brutal, you get moments like this massive tremolo fucking melody and Morbid Angel-esque fucking pummeling that is on Wayward Opulence right around the 3-minute and 30-second mark. Like, it just hits like a ton of bricks, and he just kind of digs deep and finds his inner Frank Mullen and just pukes it forth into the microphone, and way to go. But that was kind of a cool thing. Like, going over this, it kind of reminded me of a mix of a lot of things. You have the flat-out brutality of a band like Suffocation again, but you also have the technical flair and melody of a band like Obscura. And then when it comes down to the syncopated chugging, it's very, like, along the lines of Decapitated or Surreption. Like, just rhythmic pummeling chugs, and the level of syncopation is super fucking tight, and you can't help but to bang your head.
Yeah, I don't think I stopped banging my head during this. This is definitely like on a scale of 1 to 5 whiplash, this is like 3.5, 4. I guess one downside that I could say for this album, and this album this time through, before we reviewed this, I've jammed this probably 10, 11 times now. Something I found between like the first track and the last track, so between the Orphidian Descent and Eminence Emergence, the two things that I could bring together on both these songs would be that it kind of had a little bit of like a, I hate to say like Within the Ruins type of vibe, or like Born of Osiris, where it's just got like a little bit of that like deathcore aspect almost. It's kind of got that bouncy groove to it that you would find in bands like that, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing for this either.
I mean, honestly, like, I don't mind Within the Ruins, well, at least to an extent, and, you know, like, those bouncy grooves are kind of nice because, I mean, a lot of this are just kind of like neck-breaking breakdowns, so occasionally those bouncy grooves are nice. And as for me, like, in terms of, like, any complaints on here, they are pretty minimal. I think the Wayward Opulence gets a little, possibly too techy. Like, the opening breakdown with that weird, dissonant opening didn't really grab my ear right away, but it was much later on in the song that it really just started to come together. But that was just sort of an odd way to open it. And occasionally there is a bit too much atmosphere. The last song, Eminence Emergence, All of a sudden we got choirs, and I mean this feels very sci-fi. Like literally the opening on Orphean Descent sounds like a cybernetic cow being tortured. Like you just hear spacey sounds and we're just kind of left to guess what's going on there. But it's used very minimally. It goes right into the song after a little bit. There are bits where, you know, the outro kind of hangs out for a little too long, like, again, Eminence, Emergence, and, again, the choirs. Bringing gothic choirs when your atmosphere is more sci-fi related, it just feels like that was added on later, and that was the only song where I think the synths kind of got bumped a little bit forward in the mix.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, they're just back there as, like, a little bit of atmosphere, and honestly, it helps kind of make it a little bit more spacey album. This kind of changed the dynamic a little bit, and while I think the song has some killer stuff, like the last breakdown on it is monstrous, but it goes into a very long outro with all sorts of spacey soundscapes, and I think there were like seagulls in space. How do they get there?
How does that work?
It doesn't. But overall, though, those are minimal complaints, and this album is a banger. I liked their last one, Nemethia. I thought it was pretty solid. I think this is way more polished and just constructed more fluidly. Like, this flows really well as an album. And I'm going to go ahead and give it 4 stars. I really dug this. I had this one on my radar, and I do like all their stuff. In fact, I own, like, all of their albums.
Yep.
And this one is definitely up there in terms of their overall catalog. The musicianship is tight. The songwriting is tight. There are great hooks on here. It's technical as hell, but it does not forget to deliver riffs. It pummels the living shit out of you because suffocation should be loved, and it comes through in the riffs, and those syncopated breakdowns are fucking fun. If you are a fan of any of the shit that I just said, you should definitely check this out, and go ahead and check out the rest of their fucking back catalog because it's also good.
It's a 4 from me as well. I really dug this album. Again, like Nick said, I think the songs writing has definitely improved. The overall structure of everything, again, is tight and just flows really well. The start-stop motifs of the transitions are amazing. Holy riff city, dude. There's so much going on in these riffs, but again, it's not overly techy, and I like the fact that while this is considered tech death, I like that the technical aspect kind of takes a backseat to the songwriting. Phenomenal musicianship. I think these guys brought their A game to the table. It sounds like they're firing on all cylinders, and like Nick said too, I mean, I own all their stuff. This is definitely a great addition to their catalog. Again, if you like Suffocation and you like, you know, Rivers of Nile, and you like just non-stop bang your head, sour lemon face, punch your neighbor, this is it.
Yeah.
This is how to do it. I think they did a great job, and I'm very impressed and very pleased and very happy to have had this grace my eardrums.
If you missed the Faceless being brutal too.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
That's another. Yeah.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there will be a link down below. And as for our 10,000 subscriber giveaway, we have our winner picked. We are going to announce it on Tuesday. Thank you to everyone who got us this far.
Yes.
10,000 subscribers. We fucking hit it. We surpassed it already.
Right.
And it's crazy. Thank you all so much. This is, you know, I didn't know this was a dream of mine. But
right.
I guess
I didn't know. I didn't know it was going to hit this level. It never... Hitting 10,000 seemed unfathomable for a very long time, and now we're here, and yeah, you know, this is becoming a huge part of my life, and I'm very thankful for it, and very grateful for all of you guys. Thank you so much. We could not have done this without you. We appreciate you tuning in repeatedly for some reason.
There is no accounting for taste, and hopefully that is one of the reasons why you're here.
Right, but my hat's off to all of you. I don't do that often. I don't take off my fucking hat often, but hats off to all of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And of course, if you would like a t-shirt of your own with our fucking awesome Mark Riddick fucking design, I love it.
Yep.
There'll be a link down to thrallsmetal.com. Just hit us up on there and we will get you an order and get you a shirt. So with that, I want to thank you one more time because this is the thanky part of the video.
Thank you.
And we will catch you later.